Thanks, Karine. Just to follow up on Sebastian's question, so, today's measures were aimed at explicitly helping Americans to adapt to extreme heat and mitigate the harm it causes. I guess another way to ask is, should Americans expect this to be the new normal in terms of?
I mean, I'm not an expert in climate change, so I can't speak to it, what it's going to look like, but we know climate change exists, right? We know that there is a real problem here.
Are you serious?
And we know the president understands that we have to be ambitious with our policies as we move forward as a country and globally. I just listed out how the president has been a leader globally on this issue. So look, climate change is a problem. It's here. How bad it's going to get, that is for experts to speak to, but we know that we have to do everything that we can. The president wants to be aggressive here in dealing with this issue. Yes, he announced three important ways to deal with the extreme heat that we're seeing this summer, because he understands that Americans are suffering. Americans are dealing with this issue, tens of millions of Americans across the country. So as president, he put forth 4 real key ways for us to deal with that on the federal level. But of course, the Inflation Reduction Act is going to bring resources forward to make sure that we also deal with this issue. How do we move forward as climate change is taking over every part of our lives almost?
Just quickly, is there any update on the summit with Japan and South Korea?
I don't have any updates for you at this time.
Just a question about Niger. The U.S. Embassy has received reports about the borders and airports currently being closed, and commercial flights to and from Niamey have apparently been suspended until August 5th. One, has the White House confirmed this? And 2, does this hamper future rescue or evacuation efforts in the short term?
So look, just a couple of things on that. We understand what happened earlier today. The Nigerian foreign minister stated that he was the interim head of government. The President Bazoum was still the legitimate president, and that negotiations were still ongoing. And so that's important to note. The situation remains fluid. It is too soon to characterize the nature of ongoing developments. We are monitoring the situation closely and are in communication with the U.S. Embassy there. We strongly support the democratically elected president, and we condemn in the strongest terms any effort to seize power by force and disrupt the constitutional order. We call for the immediate release of the president and respect for the rule of law and public safety. And so we echo the strong condemnation of yesterday's action by Economic Community of West African States and other regional and international organizations. We are monitoring the situation closely, and we are in communication with the U.S. Embassy. And so as I just mentioned earlier, we have put out an alert to the U.S. via the U.S. Embassy. They released a security alert on all Americans who are there and how they should move forward, and so we'll continue to keep a close eye on what's going on there.
And one more question. How does this administration reassure Americans who worry about the health of leaders in Congress and here at the White House because of their advanced age?
We're waiting.
I'm not going to speak to leaders in Congress about age or about anything like that. That is for them to speak to. So what is your question exactly?
I was just wondering, how can the administration reassure Americans who are worrying about these leaders, like you said, in Congress and here at the White House?
So is your question about Congress, or is your question about leaders here? Well, I'm not going to speak to leaders in Congress.
Here at the White House?
What about your leader, the leader of Congress?
Is there a way that this administration is reassuring Americans who have these concerns?
Look, we've been asked this question multiple times, and you have a president who, I just went through his unity agenda, what we've been able to do in a bipartisan way as it relates to issues that really matter to the American people, right? The cancer moonshot, which is actually going to make a difference with people and Americans who have family members dealing with cancer. That is something that this president has been able to do.
That actually was pretty funny.
You look at the record that he's been able to lay out when you think about the economy right now, the GDP. We just laid out the good news from the GDP and how the economy is growing. This is a president who has done historic amount of policies, of changes in this administration that has mattered to the American people. And so that's what the president's going to continue to focus on. You know, since 2019, the age comment has been out there. And what has this president done? He beat Republicans in 2020. He beat Republicans in 2022, leading with the message that American people actually cared about. When you think about lowering costs, when you think about getting the economy back on its feet, that's something that this president has been able to do. And so if you look at the work that he's done, if you look at the historic amount of, changes that he's been able to make, 13.5 million jobs created under this president, unemployment at under 4%, wages are up, inflation is moderating. That's what we care about. If we are continuing to deliver for the American people in a way that truly, truly matters.
Karine, it's been almost 2 years since the administration launched that rulemaking process to develop a federal standard for heat. And this week you said that the work is ongoing to develop that national standard. So can you give us an update on where that stands and what's taking so long?
So look, we knew that the federal law would require OSHA to go through a few steps, additional steps, right, in order to make regulatory changes, including a required small business review and consultation process that the agency is in process right now of completing. And so that's why the Department of Labor kicked this process so early in the administration, because we knew it was going to take some time. And so they have been working urgently to get this done. But I want to be clear, the department, this is Department of Labor, has been taking action to protect workers this entire time under existing law, because there is an existing law. That's how we were able to do the heat alert under existing law. And so the president also recognizing protecting workers is important from heat, and that can't wait. That cannot wait. And so we asked the Department of Labor to do this heat alert, which is going to which is going to matter and make sure we protect those very workers. But it's going to take some time on the new standard that you just asked me. That's why, again, the Department of Labor did it so early, and so they're working very diligently to get this done.
So no timeline on how much
I don't have a timeline, but again, we understood that OSHA there's going to be some additional step to get there, and it's going to take some time, especially getting small businesses to, in changing regulations. And so, again, Department of Labor is on top of this, but we wanted to take a step, in between step, as we're waiting for that process. And that's why this heat alert is so incredibly important.
Got it. And secondly, you've said before that as it relates to 2x2s, it's a conversation that's had between the U.S. and the second country. It's not a unilateral decision. Today, Prime Minister Meloni is coming to the sticks. She's having a press conference at the Italian embassy. So it appears that it's the U.S. that does not want to have a joint press conference. Is that true? And if it's not, why aren't you having one?
I would not say that is true. I was not part of the deliberation on this with our National Security Council. It is a conversation, as you stated at the top, that happens between two countries. I have not asked the National Security Council on this and how those conversations went, but usually it is both countries that agree on how to move forward. You would have to really speak to the Prime Minister on how they're proceeding and doing what they're doing today.
Do you speak any English?
I'm sorry, just to be clear, as press secretary, you're not part of the conversation about...
With a diplomatic conversation with another country, that goes through the NSC.
Okay, thank you.
Karine, Senator Tester said today that he expects a Ukraine supplemental request to come from the White House by the end of the month. There's not a lot of days left in the month, so I'm wondering if that timeline is accurate and if you have more specific timing or any sense of size and scope of that request.
No, I've heard this. We don't have anything to share at this time on any supplemental requests.